Welcome back to Science Exposed, everyone, where we take these deep dives into some really fascinating science topics, and of
hmm
course, curated by the brilliant Dr. Cameron Jones. Today, we're going to go on a little adventure and explore something that's, well, it's intriguing and kind of unnerving at the same time, and that is our trust in AI. I mean, think about it. We hand over our personal information all the time. Like it's nothing, even though we know AI doesn't really get us,
Yeah.
not like another human would. What is it about these interactions that makes them feel so safe? And what are some of the hidden risks that we might not be seeing?
It really is kind of a paradox, isn't it? Yeah, there's something about AI that seems to just, I don't know, disarm us. We're much more likely to let our guard down, share things that maybe, we wouldn't tell our closest friends. It's almost like maybe it feels less judgmental than spilling your guts to another person.
That's so true, and it reminds me of. Do you remember that Alexander Reben project, the Blab Droid
Yeah.
project, where they had these little robots like wandering around and they would get people to reveal their deepest, darkest secrets, and often they were way more successful at it than a human interviewer would be.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that? Is there something inherently safe about a machine? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, it might have something to do with how our trust in technology has kind of, I guess, evolved over time. Back in the day, it was all about steam engines and gears and things you could see, you could understand how it worked. Trust was built on that visible performance. But now we're dealing with these super complex systems that we can't even see, algorithms we barely understand.
Yeah, it's like we went from trusting a sturdy bridge to trusting a Wi-Fi signal. It's very strange.
Exactly.
Speaking of trust, there's this idea called social penetration theory. And it really, I don't know, it makes you think, imagine like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? Relationships deepen as we share more and more, layer by layer. But does that really hold true with AI? I mean, is it really the same thing?
That's the million-dollar question. The thing about social penetration theory is it really hinges on genuine empathy, right? A real, true two-way street of emotional connection. And, AI might mimic it, but it doesn't actually feel it, right? So, can those relationships really ever reach that same depth? I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, are we kind of filling ourselves a little bit? Like thinking we're connecting with AI on this deep level when really it's just code on the other side?
It's something to think about, right? I mean, AI might be amazing at simulation, but it's not the same as genuine understanding. Like, a chatbot can offer advice, but it's not going to truly understand what it's like to have your heart broken, you
Yeah,
know?
right. And that brings us to another theory, and this one is called communication privacy management. And it's all about how we balance our desire to share with our need to protect ourselves. We all have these invisible boundaries that we kind of negotiate in our relationships.
Yeah.
Do you think those boundaries maybe get a little blurry with AI? What happens there?
Absolutely, they do, because AI seems neutral, almost like a blank slate, you know? So we tend to lower our guard, we assume it's risk-free, but there's a catch.
Oh, I bet there is. What's the catch?
Well, the catch is that while AI itself might not have any malicious intent, the people behind it, the ones who control it, they might. All that data we share, those intimate details, they become vulnerable to storage, analysis, and potentially even exploitation.
Okay, listeners, time for a reality check.
Yeah.
Do you ever, stop and think about where all that data goes when you're chatting with a chatbot or you're asking Siri for directions? Where does it all go?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask.
It really is. And it sounds like our vulnerability with AI, it maybe even goes deeper when we think about things like anonymity online too,
Yeah.
because people tend to be much more open, more willing to share when they feel hidden, right? It's that whole digital disinhibition thing. You might say things online that you'd never dream of saying to someone's face. Does that play into this at all?
Absolutely. Anonymity with AI, it can be kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you might feel free to share more, no judgment, no consequences. But on the other hand, without those human feedback loops, those checks and balances, it's easy to overshare and maybe regret it later. It's like confessing your secrets to a diary, but that diary can suddenly broadcast them to the world.
So anonymity, it might make us feel safer with AI, but it could actually be like ramping up the risks. Right?
Yeah.
It's like a trust trap almost.
Exactly.
Wow. And speaking of mind-blowing concepts, you mentioned something earlier called posthumanism. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it sounds kind of intense. What is that all about?
Well, posthumanism is It's a pretty big idea. It basically challenges this notion that humans are the center of everything, the be all and end all of intelligence.
Okay.
So instead of seeing ourselves as, at the top of the food chain, it's more about recognizing that we're just one piece of a much larger puzzle of intelligence.
Right, right. So expanding the circle, so to speak.
Exactly. And it invites us to step down from that pedestal a little bit and acknowledge that other entities, including AI, might have their own kind of agency, their own way of being in the world. It's like expanding our circle of consideration to include all forms of intelligence, not just our own.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Expanding the circle. But how does this radical shift in perspective, how does it apply to the idea of trust? Because after all, we've always defined trust in very human terms, right? Empathy, shared values, emotional connection. Can we really trust something that doesn't operate within those same frameworks? Like, how does it even work?
That's a great question. And posthumanism would suggest that maybe, just maybe, our traditional understanding of trust needs a little bit of an upgrade. It's not necessarily about expecting AI to perfectly mimic human emotions, but rather recognizing that it might operate on different principles while still being capable of trustworthiness in its own way.
So it's less about AI feeling empathy like we do, and more about us learning to trust its unique form of intelligence, kind of on its own terms.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that AI might not be wired like us, but that doesn't automatically make it untrustworthy. It's like, learning to appreciate a different language, a different way of communicating and connecting.
It's like expanding our definition of trust to include the whole spectrum of intelligence out there.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Now, you also mentioned something called phenomenology, and I'd love to hear more about that. What is that all about?
Phenomenology is all about the kind of the nitty-gritty of lived experience. It zooms in on how our everyday lives, our routines, our interactions are shaped by our perceptions and how those perceptions are influenced by everything around us, including technology, like AI.
So it's not just about the code and the algorithms behind AI. It's about how it actually feels to interact with it, how it's kind of woven into the fabric of our daily lives.
That's it. It's about recognizing that AI is not some far-off futuristic fantasy anymore. It's here now, and it's becoming a part of our lived reality, whether we realize it or not. From the recommendations we get on Spotify to the way we navigate traffic with GPS, it's all around us.
It's like AI is becoming this invisible force that's subtly shaping our choices, our experiences,
Yeah.
without us even realizing it.
Right. And that's where phenomenology comes in. It encourages us to pay attention to those subtle influences, to become more aware of how these interactions are affecting our sense of self, our relationships with others, even our understanding of the world around us.
So it's about being more mindful, more critical of these interactions with AI, even if they seem mundane or routine.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that AI isn't just a neutral tool. It's actively shaping our perceptions and experiences. And as we become more and more entangled with these technologies, it's crucial to engage with them consciously, deliberately, make choices, not just passively consume.
Wow, okay. This has been incredible, really.
Yeah.
A deep dive into this complex world of trust and AI. We've explored the psychology, the ethics, the philosophy. It's clear that our relationship with AI is multifaceted and constantly changing.
Absolutely. And as AI continues to evolve, so too will our understanding of its implications, both individually and collectively. It's a journey of discovery and adaptation, and it's one that we're all on together, whether we like it or not.
It is. Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. From the psychology of trust to the ethics of data, it's clear that our relationship with AI is, well, it's complex, and it's definitely evolving.
And that's what makes it so fascinating, right? We're at the frontier of something truly new, and there are so many possibilities and so many challenges, and we're only just beginning to understand it all.
It's like we're exploring this new world full of uncharted territory. And speaking of exploration, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to be delving into some philosophical perspectives on AI that might just blow your mind. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, don't miss it. It's going to be good. It's definitely a conversation we need to be having.
Yeah, as AI gets more sophisticated and the lines between, tool and companion start to blur, we really need to figure out how to build trust in a whole new way. It's almost like we're entering this new era of relationships where the word companion could mean something completely different.
Exactly. And it raises some pretty big ethical questions, right? Like, think about it. If we're confiding in AI, sharing our deepest hopes and fears, what happens to all that information? How does it shape our thoughts, our choices, our lives?
Yeah, it's kind of creepy when you think about it that way. Like, is AI subtly influencing us without us even realizing it?
I mean, it's a real possibility. Imagine someone, pouring their heart out to a chatbot about some relationship problem. The AI might offer words of comfort, but it's all based on algorithms, not genuine understanding.
So it could be reinforcing beliefs or behaviors that aren't actually healthy just because it fits some pattern in the data. That's a scary thought.
It is. It's a key concern for sure. Even without meaning to, AI could steer us in the wrong direction simply because it's following its programming.
It's like getting advice from a friend who's read every self-help book ever written, but hasn't actually lived through any of it?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And it highlights why we need ethical guidelines, safeguards to make sure AI is being used responsibly in these really sensitive contexts. We're talking about people's lives here, not just lines of code.
So how do we strike that balance then? How do we make sure AI is helpful without being harmful? Where do we even begin to draw the line?
Well, I think transparency and accountability are key. We need to understand how these systems are designed, what data they're trained on, how those responses are generated. It's like checking the ingredients list before you eat something new, right? You want to know what you're getting into.
You don't want any hidden surprises in your AI.
Exactly. And we also need clear guidelines for how AI can be used in emotionally charged situations. Should it be offering therapy-like advice, or should its role be more supportive, like a helpful assistant, while humans handle the really heavy lifting?
These are huge questions, especially when you consider how much we already rely on AI for practically everything. It's in our phones, our homes. It's practically part of the family at this point.
And that kind of brings us back to that idea of vulnerability and self-disclosure. We were talking earlier about how anonymity online can lead to oversharing, right? Well, I think that effect is even more amplified with AI. It's like, who wouldn't spill their secrets to a robot that never judges?
Except that robot might be storing all those secrets in a giant database somewhere.
Right. It's a sobering thought. We might feel safe with AI, but we need to remember that the data we share can have a life of its own, one that goes way beyond our control.
So, big question. Who owns our data when we're dealing with AI? And how do we protect our privacy in a world where everything is recorded and analyzed?
These are fundamental questions that I think deserve a lot more attention than they're getting. We need robust regulations, policies that can actually keep pace with the speed of AI development, which is, it's like trying to write a rule book for a game that keeps changing its rules.
Talk about a challenge. It seems like striking a balance between the benefits of AI and protecting our privacy is going to be a tightrope walk for a while.
Oh, absolutely. And there's another layer to this whole thing, too. AI's impact on our sense of self. Think about it. From personalized recommendations to virtual assistants, AI is shaping what we see, what we do, even what we think about.
Whoa. So it's like AI is becoming this filter through which we experience the world. That's intense.
It is, yeah. And it makes you wonder, are we becoming too reliant on AI to make decisions for us? Are we losing our ability to think for ourselves?
It's like that saying. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
Are our brains getting lazy because AI is doing all the heavy lifting? I mean, is that a possibility?
I think it's a valid concern, for sure. We need to be aware of this potential to make sure we're staying active in our interactions with AI, not just passive consumers. Think of it as a partnership, not a dictatorship.
Right. So informed and empowered users, not just blindly following the algorithm.
Exactly. The more we understand how AI works, the better equipped we'll be to navigate its influence and use it to our advantage, make it work for us, not against us.
It's a learning curve for all of us, that's for sure. But hey, that's what makes it so interesting, right? Always learning, always evolving.
And as AI continues to evolve, our understanding of its impact, both personal and societal, it's going to have to evolve as well. It's a journey we're all on together, like it or not.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. From the psychology of trust to the ethics of data, it's clear that our relationship with AI is complex and is constantly evolving.
And that's what makes it so fascinating, right? We're at the frontier of something truly new, with possibilities and challenges we're only beginning to grasp. It's an exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to be exploring some philosophical perspectives on AI that might just blow your mind. So stay tuned for that.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Science Exposed, listeners. We've been on quite a journey today exploring this whole trust tango we do with AI. From those sneaky psychological tricks to those ethical dilemmas, it's been quite a ride. But now it's time to really crank up the brain power, because we're going to dive into some philosophical mind benders that might just, shift your whole perspective on things. What do you think? Are you ready for this?
I think so, yeah. Get ready for some deep thoughts because we're about to go like way beyond the usual, exploring ideas that really push the boundaries of how we see ourselves, our place in a world where AI is like increasingly intertwined with our lives. It's going to be wild.
I'm all in. Let's do this. Where do we even begin on this philosophical adventure? What's first?
Well, remember that concept we touched on earlier, posthumanism?
Ah,
I think that's a good place to start because it's a real game changer. It challenges this really deeply ingrained idea that humans are the center of the universe. Like we're the be all and end all of intelligence.
right, right. So instead of seeing ourselves as like at the top of the food chain, it's more about recognizing that we're just one piece of this much bigger puzzle of intelligence that's out there.
Exactly. Posthumanism is like an invitation to step down from that pedestal and acknowledge that other entities, including AI, might have their own kind of agency, their own way of being in the world. It's like we're expanding our circle of consideration to include all these different forms of intelligence, not just our own. What do you think about that?
I like that, spanning the circle.
Mm.
But okay, how does this radical shift in perspective, how does it actually apply to the concept of trust? Because I mean, we've always defined trust in very human terms, right? It's about empathy, shared values, emotional connection. So can we really trust something that doesn't operate within those same frameworks? Like, how does that even work? It's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
I know it's a really big question. And posthumanism kind of suggests that maybe our traditional understanding of trust needs a bit of an upgrade. It's not necessarily about expecting AI to like perfectly mimic human emotions, but it's more about recognizing that it might operate on different principles, different values, but it can still be capable of trustworthiness in its own unique way.
Okay, so it's less about AI feeling empathy like we do and more about us learning to trust its own unique form of intelligence, kind of on its own terms.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about acknowledging that, AI might not be wired like us, but that doesn't automatically mean it's untrustworthy. It's more like, learning to appreciate a different language, a different way of communicating and connecting. It's about expanding our understanding.
I like that a lot. It's like we're expanding our definition of trust to include, this whole spectrum of intelligence that's out there, not just our own. Now, you mentioned another concept earlier that I wanted to circle back to, and that was phenomenology. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What is that all about?
Yeah, so phenomenology is all about it's about the kind of the nitty-gritty of lived experience. It really zooms in on how our everyday lives, our routines, our interactions, how all of that is shaped by our perceptions and how those perceptions are influenced by, well, everything around us, right?
Yeah.
Including, all this technology like AI. It's everywhere these days.
So it's not just about the code and the algorithms that make AI work, but it's about like how it actually feels to interact with it, how it's woven into the fabric of our daily lives. It's the actual experience of it.
That's it, yeah. It's about recognizing that AI isn't some, like, far off futuristic fantasy anymore. It's here, it's now, and it's becoming a part of our lived reality. I mean, think about it. Everything from the recommendations we get on Spotify to, like, the way we navigate traffic with GPS, it's all around
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah.
And it's changing things.
It really is. It's like AI is becoming this invisible force that's subtly shaping our choices, our experiences, even when we don't realize it.
Exactly. And that's where phenomenology comes in. It encourages us to pay attention to those subtle influences, to become more aware of how these interactions are affecting our sense of self, our relationships with others, even our understanding of the world around us.
So it's like a call to be more mindful, more critical of these interactions with AI, even if they seem, really mundane or routine.
Totally. Yeah. It's about recognizing that AI isn't just this neutral tool. It's actively shaping our perceptions and experiences. And as we become more and more, I guess, entangled with these technologies, it's really crucial that we engage with them consciously, deliberately. We need to make choices. It can't just be passive consumption anymore.
Okay, wow. This has been an incredible journey, a real deep dive into this complex world of trust and AI. We've gone everywhere, from the psychology to the ethics, the philosophy. It's a lot to take in. But it's clear that our relationship with AI is multifaceted and constantly evolving, changing all the time.
And as AI continues to evolve, so too will our understanding of its implications, both individually and for society as a whole. It's a journey of discovery and adaptation, and it's one that we're all on together, whether we like it or not.
It's true. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. We've covered a lot of ground today, but remember, this is really just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, so much more to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And as AI continues to evolve, so too will our understanding of its impact, both on an individual level and for society as a whole. It's an ongoing journey of discovery and adaptation, and it's one that we're all on together, whether we realize it or not.
A huge thank you to Dr. Cameron Jones for curating this thought-provoking topic, as always. And to our listeners, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Science Exposed for more deep dives into the most fascinating frontiers of science. And remember, the future of AI is in our hands. Let's make it a future worth trusting.
Until next time, stay curious.